Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're doing an installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we're going to be looking at the Explore Best of One format. For this week I'm probably going to cover a lot of the Best of One formats. Starting this weekend we're getting the first of the metagame challenges, which is standard, so we'll do a video for that ahead of the tournament so you can get all those best decks. There was a nerf to Fragment Reality and Geological Appraiser that's going into place today. Of recording within Timeless and Historic, which should shake those formats up a bit, so I'm going to wait a week or till next week and then hopefully go there. Historic was basically 3 decks when I was recording, and it was really built around those Appraiser Discover combos as well as the Geist combos, so hopefully get some stats there as well. So just kind of mentioning where we're at with things. But the weekend I'm going to try some of the metagame challenges. In any case, we are looking at Explore Best of One today. I put out a video last week, I think, on Best of 3, so that should get you mostly up to date. There was the Pioneer Championship that took place at Pro Tour. The biggest breakout deck there was Rakdos Vampires, which we'll cover in some extent here, which won the full tournament. Lotus Field was like another innovative deck that we saw, but you can't play it on Arena. It's missing some key cards. So we are going to look popularity of the day first, and then we'll look at the decks themselves. As always, a deck could be popular, doesn't necessarily correlate to win rate. Sometimes does, sometimes doesn't, but it gives you a shape of what the meta is looking like. This is towards the beginning of the month, being March 5th, so we're going to look Platinum to Mythic rank, just given that the ladder reset a couple days ago, so there won't be that density in the upper brackets. But Abzan Amalia is the most popular, and this data is from UntapGG. Link if you want to use Untap's tracking tools is in the video description, and then I'll paste all these deck lists as well. You could get the kind of free version, get you some stats. There is a premium version that some of this data is locked behind, but I'll paste the deck list so you can get around there. So Abzan Amalia, this is the combo version, wins through substantial life and kind of one-sided board wipe kind of effect with a full drain package. Azorius Control got a lot of new tools from the most recent set. Izzet Phoenix, one of the more powerful decks of the format. Boros Heroic, very linear, very strong, and best of one. Simon Nielsen, I think, came second in the Pro Tour with it, or at least top 4 with it. Selesnian Angels, still sticking around 6%. I honestly don't see it that much, but it is one of the more popular tribal decks. Greasefang's been doing really poorly this week. It's like sub 50%, so I wouldn't necessarily play Greasefang. It's doing okay today, but like looking at the stats, I couldn't even find a version over 50%. Still gonna win sometimes on turn 3, but all in all, it seems like it was getting attacked pretty well in the format. Monogreen Devotion got an upgrade with the Leyline, the multicolor Leyline from the most recent set. It was putting up some reasonable stats in Best of 3. In Best of 1, I think Monogreen Devotion is poorly placed because it has a really tough time against the aggressive decks, and it has a tough time against the control decks. What it preys on is a lot of the mid-range decks. However, Best of 1 tends to be very linear. And without the Karn package, you can't kind of have a tutorable sideboard in Best of 1. So I think I wouldn't bring it in Best of 1. We'll cover it definitely in Best of 3. And I do want to try it out with the new Leyline to see how it plays out. Rakdos midrange is going to group both the Vampires and the traditional Rakdos midrange in there. Just looking at kind of the stats, we see blue-white, which was in the previous weeks the top dog, has fallen down to middle of the pack. We see an increase in Izzet Phoenix, an increase a bit in the heroic decks, and then just pretty stark for Amalia 21, and it's been coming down as well. There'll be a decal feature at the end. It's not included in these stats in terms of like aggregated win rates. It's a deck I got Mythic last month with. It's a deck that I'm continuing to do very well with this month. So I'll cover that one at the end if you want to see what that one is. So Best of 1, 27th of February through March 5th, Platinum to Mythic rank, 22,000 games played. And the top performing deck, this one makes me happy. Simic Merfolk, 71.7%, just under 50 games played. And we got some new cards in here. There's a couple soft combos that you can do. So notable, Deeproot Pilgrimage. Whenever one or more non-token Merfolk you control become tapped, you create a 1/1 Merfolk creature with hexproof. Now, you attack, the attack counts all, say, 5 of your Merfolks at the same time. So you only get 1 token. But you can tap them individually to Smuggler's Copter, which is an instance each. It crews for 1, so all your creatures can crew it. So then you get a copy for each non-token Merfolk. You can also use Kumena to tap each instance and then get more tokens that way there. And then with Kumana, you get to draw more cards, which is kind of sweet. This version here, you got Sinnoh Scout to help you with the early drops in terms of mana. Kumena is just a 1 mana Grizzly Bear. Mistcaller is pretty sweet here because you can sacrifice it for like Collected Company or Court of Calling against like the Amalia decks, or even if like Phoenix enters the battlefield, it enters from the graveyard, so you can exile the Phoenixes. So interesting tech there. Void and Hex Catcher is a lord that can be used as a counterspell. Turn your Merfolks into counterspells. Plays really nicely with all the extra copies. A couple of Silver Guild for just card advantage. Some Merfolk Mistbinders as another lord, and then Tidebinder to shut off a bunch of activated abilities. Collected Company, you also get to leverage the Cavern of Souls in this build. And just seeing, yeah, I'm just seeing if like you can, I would even maybe try going up an additional copy of Cavern. Like you have the Lair, you have the Beseju, which are fine, but I think you could probably go up an additional copy of Cavern of Souls. It's really good against like the blue-white decks. But that's a sweet one. I love playing Merfolks, played it a lot in Timeless, Historic. It's a fun kind of tempo, aggro. It's a creature deck, but there's a lot of decisions to be made, which I always find like fun. And then getting to play Smuggler's Copy, this card's awesome. Then go to Azorius Control. Preface, there's a few different variants of Control. You can have Yorion, you can have Lotus Field. There's a whole bunch of different takes on it. Depends on how you want to play the deck. This version's a Kahira companion. I actually think in Best of One, and I welcome your thoughts on this, I think it's wrong to play Kahira Commander or Companion in Best of One because it gives your opponent information in terms of how they're mulliganing. In Control Mirrors, it'll give your opponent the information that they shouldn't keep hands with a lot of removal and instead try to be more counterspell based. Against creature decks, or like say like mid-range decks or stuff like that, they might opt to keep Fatal Pushes or stuff like that in instead of, more proactive plays. There's the upside of like having it as a win condition, but I think you have enough win conditions in these decks other than just like morally devastating your opponent that it provides less value given the information. But I welcome your thoughts on that. Like Yorion at least lets you play extra cards. This is just basically to have a creature on hand. But the deck got No More Lies as a mana leak style effect. It got the Deuce. This version's on temporary lockdown for the more aggressive decks. Still have your Wander Teferi package, Dig Through Time being featured in the deck as well as the card advantage engine. Bunch of like removal, counters, all that jazz. We're also seeing a couple copies of the Surveil line being featured here. All the Storm Giants as win condition, Castle Ardenvale also mixed into here as well. So if you want to be a Gandalf, it's a good place to be right now. Plays pretty well into the format. I couldn't play the mirrors. I tried recording a video of it and I just find the mirrors. I find the mirrors boring because of this card here. I used to, like in paper when I was playing, when I was a standard grinder, I used to play only Control. But like I played every Snapcaster, Esper midrange, Esper Control deck, Nephalia Drownyard deck back in the day. The thing I enjoyed most were Control battles, where Dovin's Veto just eliminates a lot of that counterplay. Just being uncounterable counterspell, it takes out a lot of the like sequencing where you might have 6 counterspells on the stack between both players. This just kind of invalidates all that, and it basically just becomes who draws their vetoes for Teferi and kind of sticks it longer, which I don't really enjoy that type of gameplay. The Heroic deck's largely unchanged, 69% win rate. The version from the Pro Tour, I believe from Simon, was playing 2 Fugitive Codebreakers, but the big kind of plus card here is Monstrous Rage, just being an instant speed, big boost in power, as well as Residual Trample plays really nicely, while you have Ancestral Anger, which is useful for a single turn trample. This one here lets you kind of stack more damage. They're pretty much all off Dreadhorde Arcanist. It's a bit too slow in the format. Illuminator Virtuoso is kind of the big... If you untap with this card, you pretty much win most games if they don't have an answer for it right away. A lot of protection spells, pump spells, stuff of that nature. It's a deck that is very explosive, but like half the cards in the deck don't do anything if you don't have a creature up. I'd say more than half. 26, yeah, but almost half the deck does nothing without a creature out. So it's a bit frustrating at times, but other times you feel unbeatable where you're just absolutely smashing face. Abzan Amalia, 68%. So there's a few different variants in terms of specific one-ofs, but the core combo of the deck is Amalia Benavides, Wild Growth Walker, and anything that enables a life gain. What happens is the life gain triggers an Explore. Explore gains you 3 life from Wild Growth Walker, triggers Explore, repeat, repeat, repeat. Once this hits exactly 20 life, it board wipes the board, and it keeps Amalia around, and then you can attack it for lethal. If you have a Dina out, each life gain goes on the stack and drains your opponent out that way there. Notably, there's kind of a weird, if you go over 20 life, or if the Wild Growth Walker is indestructible, it creates a infinite loop that can't be broken and the game ends in a draw. There's also ways of doing it where you can make Amalia's power greater than 20. From like the Boros Heroic deck, you can pump the Amalia that was happening in the Pro Tour. That's kind of a janky way to kind of break the combo there. Luminarch Veteran gains you life, Gilded Goose gains you life, Extraction Specialist on the attack can gain you life, Prosperous Innkeeper can gain you life, lots of ways. The Deep Cavern Bat is like a Thoughtseize effect that can gain you life. The tech for the Mirror and Best of One is Night of Dusk Shadow, can be tutored, shuts off opponent's life gain. And then some protection spells, Court of Calling and Collected Company help you find combo pieces. And then Return to the Ranks could kind of bring your combo pieces back from the graveyard and kind of win that way there. Moving on, we go to Rakdos Midrange, aka Rakdos Vampires. So this was the version, or pretty close to the version from the Pro Tour. We've seen slight variation of the deck. The other one was playing 4 Vein Rippers. Kind of the combo of the deck is Sorin Impervious Bloodlord, -3 into Vein Ripper. And this card goes very hard against a lot of the format, just dodging fatal pushes. Control has a hard time with single copy removal outside of like a sweeper dealing with it. You have a lot of the powerful effects of the Rakdos Shell, Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, various removal spells, Fable the Mirror Breaker, the Blood Tithe Harvester. Incidentally, is a vampire. Bitter Triumphs. You're playing Dusk Legion Zealot is kind of a cycler that can also be a vampire. Some Preachers in here, and then this version here is basically playing a Shieldred main instead of the 4th Vein Ripper. We also see a couple of copies of Mutavault, which are incidentally vampires as well. Izzet Phoenix, 61%. So this is a deck that's looking to basically self-mill in a way, or selectively mill. You want to put Arc-like Phoenix into your graveyard. You can do things like Picklock Prankster to mill yourself over. Ledger Shredder can draw discard. You have Lightning Axe that can pitch, Consider's ability. You have like Sleight of Hand that can kind of draw you a bunch of cards, like a lot of cheap cantrips to then enable it. Treasure Cruise to refill your hand. Prismari Command can loot. Some of the lists at the Pro Tour are also playing like 3-mana Ashiok in the main. So there's a couple little tech variations you can do with the deck itself. Some are playing Hall of the Storm Giant in the mana base. This version here looks a little bit more budgety in terms of the mana base. You should be playing the full Spire Bluff Canal package in here. You could probably get away with either a Den of the Bugbear or a Hall of the Storm Giant in the mana base. I don't know how many Storm Coast they play, but at the very least play a full set of Spire Bluff Canals in this list. But you basically get to the turn, you have Phoenix in the graveyard, cast 3 instant sorceries, and then get back the birds. Baka Baka. Rakdos Sac, just showing it, nothing really innovative at this particular version. We're seeing a single copy of Torch the Tower in the main board, plays really nicely with all the artifact synergy. Cat Oven continues to Cat Oven people. Mayhem Devil, Fable, stuff of that nature. Still a reasonable deck. I don't know how it plays against the Amalia. I guess you could control the board pretty well. Like with Mayhem Devils, just deal with all their small creatures, which plays pretty well. You also have Claim the Firstborn to steal stuff. I feel like it's got a pretty bad matchup into Control, and with Control being very popular, it might present a bit of an issue. But welcome to thoughts. Like, I haven't played Sac in a while. How you think it's positioned right now otherwise, but reasonable win rate, all things considered. Mono Black Waste Not, 59%. I personally think this deck is not very good, but people keep winning with it. The reason being, it's one of the decks, it's like Insidious Roots. When you have the namesake card, the deck is very good. When you don't have that card, the deck feels pretty bad. So Waste Not it gets you a whole bunch of benefit if your opponent is discarding cards. The contingency is you need to get a 2 mana, do nothing the turn it comes down enchantment into play, and then you also then need your opponent to have cards at later portions of the game. A lot of the decks in Best of 1 in particular are going to be dumping their hand. Now this might be a reasonable call against blue-white control if it's heavily representative at your stage of the meta, but there's a lot of times where Waste Not's just not going to do much. There is like the Gyre Reach Sanitarium effect where you can force them to draw discard, but now you're kind of building a process to get mediocre value. It is like early turns, like it's going to win games because you triple Thoughtseize your opponent or duress, whatever it may be. You're still playing powerful colors like Shieldred, Invoke could come timely, Rankless Prank could blow some people out. I just think it's like you're not playing to the board too much at times, and it's like, say turn 7, this is a deck that's going to go long, but turn 7, turn 8, turn 9, you're drawing like a duress when your opponent's top decking. It's not really going to do much. But those are my thoughts. This might be a better best of 3 deck where you then can tailor some of your discard and stuff like that. But I think my mono black mid range is super reasonable. I just don't think going all in on the discard package is the correct call. And then lastly, the deck I've been playing, it is Izzet Gearhulk Creativity. And I've been trimming, I'm actually only playing 3 creativities because I think it's not like the straight I win combo like it is with, say, World Spineworm and Xenagod. So I don't need as many copies. Also, my namesake card Gearhulk is much easier to cast. I'm 15-4 with the deck, and I've won a bunch. Like, I play this deck a lot, like on my iPad at night while watching TV. 90% win rate on the play. Which is pretty good. The reason I like this deck is it's super reasonable against control, and it can farm pretty much all the creature decks. The only deck that felt like... So there's 2 decks that feel really tough. The Vampires deck, depending on how they curve out, like in one game my opponent Thoughtseize me early, once a Preacher on turn 3, my removal doesn't line up with 4 toughness well, and then turn 4 cheated in Vein Ripper. I can't answer those kind of configurations. That and Angels is actually a tough matchup. Again, 4 toughness is the tough point in terms of like power. While you have Magma Opus, you're not usually going to turn 2 or turn 3 Magma Opus in this deck, so it's a little tough. They can outpace your life gain. They have flyers. There's just a lot of ways that it's tough to kind of deal with it in that sense. Thankfully, Angels isn't, I don't run into Angels that much. These are additions you can fix post sideboard. Burn Down the House is the thing I'm going to be trying out. Witchstalker, Frenzy, stuff of that nature. But those are the 2 decks that have been problematic. Amalia is like, so I find that matchup very easy. You're playing Fiery Impulse and Torch the Tower, 7/1 mana removal spells. Prismari Command is cheap. Basically, Stern's Lesson draws you 2, creates a Power Stone that can ramp you. So it's also ramp in a way for the Torrential Gearhulk. So it can kind of fuel you. So it's very easy to like ramp on 2 with Opus. You can ramp again with Stern Lesson or Prismari Command. You can also use the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I think playing 4 Fable is great. I've won many games of just Fable copying Fable for value. Fable also could copy Gearhulk, and then you can buy back Magma Opus for 1 mana. The Deuce is another sweet card that's been included in the deck now. It's effectively 2 card draws if needed, but it's also an artifact. All these artifacts are really good with Torch Tower. Torch also exiles, so it's good against any sort of recursive creature, stuff like that. And then so some of these lists are playing the Surveil land. I don't like the Surveil land as much in this format as I do in Fetchland formats, because you can do it at like your end step. I found it was kind of screwing up my curve. I'm playing 2 Myrex. This card, like at times, just solos control. They need to find Field of Ruin, otherwise you basically don't need to commit to the board and just keep Myrexing on end step. It gets around like life gain, it puts pressure on them in ways, and then they kind of focus about that, and then you can just cheat in Gearhulk and stuff like that. But what I like about this deck against control, you have some counters, but you can play a flash speed game, and your threats could come in on their turn, and it kind of messes up their math. The only thing I want to preface, Torrential Gearhulk gets hit by Beseiju. So just be mindful, it's an artifact. So that is one consideration when you're playing the deck. You have creativity that can find your Gearhulks, but it's not the, like again, not the full combo. But this deck, I have gameplay on my channel. I find it very fun to play. Just different ways to kind of attack the meta I don't know if the full side. I was playing. My sideboard's not there yet. I'll have it for the metagame challenge. I've just been playing it in best of one to kind of tune the main board as I go. But that's it for the week. Let me know what you think, what you've been playing, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.